Hello! This is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of Corellian tradition and of Gaia Thrift, where I am today. And we, about an hour ago, did a live auction of various fashion items. Perhaps you saw it. This is going to be an ongoing feature from Gaia Thrift. It was a lot of fun. I hope that you'll join us in the future. We have lots of interesting things. Today, we are here for Midday with Reverend Don. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you're watching on. And on most of those platforms, they'll show up here in my chat room. The chat room is on the screen because I do not have a guest today, and we can all share the chat room together. And yesterday, I was talking about the Lady Bitter Wind, my beloved sister and teacher and mentor and longtime first elder of the Corellian tradition, and why her different way of looking at things was valuable, and why anyone in a position of leadership should always surround themselves with people who do not see everything the same way. Because when everyone sees everything the same way, you don't miss what you would not yourself see. Or you do miss what you would not yourself see. When people see it differently, then you don't miss it. People can bring to your attention what might not be within your range to see. And this is very important for people who are in positions of responsibility to be able to deal with many points of view. And hello to world pagans in the chat room. And this is, I think, one of the biggest deficits that many quarters of our pagan community face, that they try so hard to have uniformity that nobody can see beyond that echo chamber. And that is not good. The truth of the matter is life is not an echo chamber, and we need to be able to see broadly and clearly in every direction. Um, I was talking about Lady Bitterwind and the fact that she frequently came back to the cycle of predation and prey. And in a manner of speaking, we're out there on the plane, needing to keep our eyes open for that lion or what have you that might come with the desire to eat us. Of course, in the lives that we lead, it's not going to be a lion; it will be an event. It may be a circumstance. Um, But yes, we need to be open to seeing those things and knowing how to deal with them. You know, I've often talked about the Helms Amendment in the 1980s. And I will repeat what that was for those who are not familiar. This was an attempt at a constitutional amendment banning any religious organization that used the term witchcraft from being recognized as a religious organization. It was defeated at that time. Most of our large churches and other 501c3 organizations would not have been able to exist if that had been passed. Luckily, we saw it, we were aware of it, and we had people who were large enough in their point of view to oppose it successfully. Um, Together with the fact that at that time, it was a bit of a minority attempt anyway. I don't know if that would still be the case today. Do we still have the broadness of vision to oppose such a thing? Well, I hope that we do. But we need to keep that broadness of vision as we go forward. One of the things that was pointed out to me today, you know, I spent much of the last year talking about Project 2025 and why we needed to be concerned about that. And some of us were, and some of us were not. You know, there were a lot of people who said this is nothing to worry about. This is just fear mongering. Um, Well, today we're seeing that Project 2025, being put in place at lightning speed. It was certainly not nothing to worry about. Now, is all of it going to come to pass? I can't imagine all of it will come to pass, but it's a thing. it was brought to my attention this morning that if you are paying attention to international news sources, much of the rest of the world is saying that the USA has gone through a coup, that our current administration is so far outside of our normal law as to basically constitute uh, a, a, a coup over our normal government system. This is interesting to be living through. It is interesting to see that our own media are not portraying it that way, while major international media are. But on the other hand, that's somewhat to be expected. It is an interesting place. We are living in interesting times. And what do we do with this? Well, that's our question. How do we survive in a world that is perhaps less friendly than it was? How do we survive in a world where the powers that be definitely wish to marginalize and minimize us? Whether we're talking about those of us who are various stripes of pagan, or part of the LGBTQ community, or of various racial minorities, we all need to be mindful of the fact that the world has become somewhat less friendly to us. And what do we do? And the answer is that the things that we might have done a year ago are not necessarily going to be helpful to us now. Um, and we need to be thinking, we need to be seeing what is a practical response to these situations. And many of them, there really isn't much practical response we can make. Certainly in our individual groups. Now, the more we can stand together, the more we can do. I do believe that um, to some extent, public expressions of displeasure are going to be noticed. Are they going to make a difference? I don't know. Only if it appears that people just aren't going to do it. I think that, one of the things that I and many people that I'm associated with are doing this month is continuing to focus on the idea of Black History Month, even though the government has chosen not to. Maintaining the things that we have regarded as important and not stopping just because a certain group wants it stopped. We'll see what that does. We'll see what any of this does. But what we must not do is give up. What we must not do is simply accept that things are as they are and there's nothing for us to do. What we must do is find what is practical for us to do and do that. And that's where my mind is on that subject. And hopefully we're going out to all places we're supposed to be going out. We're not getting a lot of comments in the chat room, but then we don't always. I am mindful of the fact that when I talk about the powers that be being less friendly, a lot of people are thinking of very strong arm tactics. That isn't necessarily anything that's going to happen. Changing the algorithms on the internet so that our media doesn't go anywhere, that is a far more likely tactic and a far harder thing to oppose. And I'm questioning whether that algorithm is not, in fact, changing. And hello to Kayleen from Australia. It's good to see you, Kayleen. So yes, we are going out. Yay. It is an interesting place to be. And I think that we have to be very cautious in how we choose to respond, because on one hand, simply letting everything run its course is not desirable. And hello to Daniel Michael in the chat room. But we need to be mindful about the ways in which we resist that course, the ways in which we attempt to change that course back to what we would regard as normalcy. And as I frequently say, it's very important that we do not um, waste our energy in pointless fighting. Um, and hello to Ed the Pagan in the chat room, who remarks on shutting down shops online without notice, um, remarks on which school was and is filtered um, through many filtering systems that don't allow it to go places, often under the guise of parental controls. Um, remember, Christianized filters on schools, etc., still exist. Yes, and that is um, a huge tool to use against our community. Whether we're talking about, again, the pagan community or the LGBTQ community or the various ethnicities that many of us belong to, it doesn't have to be an obvious, heavy-handed uh, technique. It can be something like um, filtering and otherwise um, shutting down our ability to reach people. And these are ways that are largely invisible. You don't even know that it's happening. I remember we found out years ago that which school was being filtered out of, I believe it was Panera Bread. And we found that out because we went there and tried to access our site at a meeting and couldn't do so. Otherwise, we'd have never known. Um, and as far as I know, that never changed. It is important for us to remember that not everything has to be done in obvious ways. And, that is true for those who wish to marginalize our community. It's also true for us. The most practical actions are not necessarily the spectacular ones. The most successful actions are not necessarily the ones that everybody's going to notice. And then again, sometimes they are. I am put in mind of a Bitterwind story, since we were talking about her yesterday in honor of her 80th birthday. Many years ago, there was a political rally held here in Danville at the local public schools. And many parents objected to this because they did not think that a person from a particular party should be using the schools in that way, and they went out to protest. And nobody noticed the protests. The news were there, but they never turned their cameras toward the protesters. But Lady Bitterwind was one of the protesters, and her answer to this was to start dancing with her protest sign. And presently, all those cameras turned to the dancing lady with the sign. So sometimes the obvious thing does work. And hello to, well, Daniel says, I think PR campaigns against those who funded the current administration. Well, yeah. The jail building company, Core Civic, for example, and $78 million toward the election. This was very much an example of the power of money in election. But if you think about it, our government has been working for years to make what used to be called dark money perfectly acceptable in our elections. We can really very strongly see that now. So it remains to see what's going to happen. And we will find out. But we need to be mindful of where we put our energy because we only have so much. One of the strong techniques that's been used by the Christian Dominionist movement over the years is to embroil smaller groups such as ourselves in long drawn out court battles or other confrontations, which use all of our energy and money. And we need to be careful not to get caught in this sort of thing. We need to be careful to choose our battles and to pursue them in a practical manner. And not to go running about willy-nilly and then find ourselves exhausted and unable to do anything. Um, so you don't hear me saying a lot of go out and do this and go out and do that right at this moment, because I don't think it's the moment for it. I think we'll just be wasting energy. Um, but I won't always think that, and I don't think that about everything. But I am a great believer in conserving our energy for when we need it. When you come into a conflict of any sort, the more energy you have, the longer you can keep up the fight, the more likely you are to come out um, in a good position. And if you go in exhausted, you're likely to have problems. And um, Kayleen says, what is happening in the US also applies elsewhere. For example, we banned large political donations in Australia not long ago, but all the algorithm issues, etc., apply here also. Absolutely. Um, I mean, one of the things that we are seeing is how these big media companies can be used politically. And um, yeah, we certainly will only see more of it. Now, does that mean there's nothing we can do? Of course, it doesn't mean that. But we must be cautious in what we choose to do. And it is worth saying this is not only something happening in the United States, it's happening in many, many places. Um, and it is certainly easy to look at this and become dejected or dispirited and think there's nothing we can do. And I would not for a moment want you to think I'm saying that. I'm saying that we need to use patience, wisdom, and foresight in choosing what we do as we go forward, with an idea to the long-term stability and prosperity of our communities. And we need to definitely not run after momentary emotional satisfaction. A lot of people, not only pagan people, but certainly pagan people, but a lot of people of all backgrounds are addicted to momentary emotional satisfaction, and they forget about long-term success. We need to realize this is a long-term situation that needs long-term planning. One of the things that I am involved in is making sure to archive our information. And we'll be talking a lot more about this in the future. But I think it's reasonable to assume that we will see this kind of unofficial attack on our information as we go forward, um, where certain platforms will either simply shut down or they will get rid of, for example, what might be called low producing accounts, which would be us and various marginalized groups. Um, and Daniel says, showing integrity takes time. Well, yes, it does. Building anything takes time. One of the things I've talked about on this program before, so the secret to our success has been that we are grinders. That means we come back every day and keep doing it. We don't stop. We may occasionally change our particular tactic, but we keep on working. That is the only strategy that is going to be successful for our community, that we do not stop. We do not lay down, and we do not simply go away. I often tell the story, and I actually had great fun telling it to Selena Fox herself recently, about a year ago. But the story that when I was a young man, there was an account from one of the early pagan spirit gatherings, which had about 300 attendees, which will tell you how long ago it was. And a group of about 40 armed protesters showed up threatening violence. And most of those attendees ran into the woods to hide and left Lady Selena and a handful of other elders to go handle the protesters. And I remember saying at that time, that I was never going to be the guy who ran into the woods. That we need to stand up when we are challenged. We need to be there in the forefront when we are challenged. Because those people in the woods, had Lady Selena not been so skillful in handling that situation peacefully, which she did, and her team did, but had they not been able to, those armed people could have gone into those woods and chased all those people down. And what would they have done? They would have been alone in the woods behind a tree somewhere. Whereas the 300 of them standing together would have been much harder to deal with. I think that is a story we all can learn from, and that we need to not run into the woods. I've seen a lot of people talking about their desire to run into the woods, and it's an understandable desire, but it's not a good tactic. It is the last thing we need to do, because alone in the woods, we are defenseless. Together, we may still be outnumbered. We may be outclassed. We also might not be. But we certainly have more chance of making a stand together than any one of us does individually. And we need to bear that in mind. It's an interesting time that we are living in. And, if you have followed my media work, or Ed the Pagan's media work, you'll know we've been warning about this for a very long time. And, well, here we are. Hopefully the lessons we have learned along the path will give us good guidance now. And Daniel says, we're so used to thinking big, headlines and all, that some folks forget how much can be done on small local levels and through building relationships. And this is true. And we need really to have both of these things going on. One of the best things that our local pagan communities can do is to remain visible and positive and interact with people in positive ways, to have bridges with other parts of the local community and not be totally isolated. This is one way where the pagan Pride Day and similar celebrations over the years have been extremely helpful, in my opinion, where groups like the Southern Delta Church of Wicca have done an exceptional job in building out into their local community and representing to that local community that we are good people that can be worked with despite the fact we have a different religion. And for the most part, we are able to make that case with people. And I think that's one of the main things we need to be doing. We here at Gaia Thrift are open every day, interacting with people as good neighbors. And this is one of those things that has far more effect than might be obvious. How people choose to put their own support in that wider community, should there be a challenge to our community, is going to depend how they feel about our community. And if they've never met us and they don't know us, they're not going to have good feelings for us. But if they have, well, then they may not allow that. These are things that our minds must be turning to at this time. Things that we must be thinking of at this time as we go forward. And with that, I see we're coming toward the end of our half hour, and I want to take a moment for a message from our sponsors, because we love our sponsors. And here we go.
Ready to unlock the secrets of the universe? Join me, Rev Don Lewis, for my metaphysical and magic auctions at Gaia Thrift at whatnot.com. Discover fascinating artifacts, mystical crystals, and rare and unusual books that could change your life. Don't miss this chance to bring a little magic into your world. Rev Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions, where the extraordinary can become yours.
And thank you to our sponsors, Equinox Learning Hub and Reverend Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions. At whatnot.com, Gaia Thrift. We had a Gaia Thrift auction today at 11 a.m. I believe we're planning to have regular Wednesday auctions in the future, but watch for more information about that. And I hope that you will continue to join us. I hope you're enjoying the program. And if there's anything particular you'd like to hear me speak to, let me know. And we will continue to talk to a variety of issues. And Kayleen says, oh, Mandanguwu, thank you, in Wiradjuri, an Australian First Peoples language, and blessed be. Thank you, Kayleen. And with that, let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we ask you to continue to be with us and guide us as we go forward. Help us to rise up to meet all the challenges that we find in life and to benefit from these and grow, and also to thrive in our lives and in our communities. Help us to find the ways, both as individuals and as a community, to thrive and grow and continue forward. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love and knowing you are always with us. From respect, we thank you for your presence and may you be blessed now and always. May you be blessed now and always, and I will see you again tomorrow.